That's kind of a loaded question for me.
I have to say it wasn't there in the beginning because I was always taught to protect myself.
As for the loss of my loved one, initially I was pretty quiet about it.
In the beginning, I remember going to group therapy sessions, and we would begin sharing stories about our children, and we would begin sharing stories about how the accident had happened or how else it was that their child had passed.
For me, it's pretty easy to share a lot of the stories that me and my son had together.
The ease came when I was around other men like myself that had lost people.
It was actually the therapist I was seeing at the time that made the comment about, well, have you ever thought about journaling?
For me, I found that that's the best help for me with my grief right now is to talk about him because I'm scared that his memory will never be, we'll lose a memory of him or we'll lose thoughts of him.
And something that became very difficult for me was listening to these people talk and then listening to these people talk.
Initially I was, I'm not a real big writer. I don't know if that's my thing. And so I actually kind of tabled that idea for several months.
And then listening to this person over here try to make their story sound worse. And then this person over here trying to make it sound like their pain was even bigger than anyone else in this room that could say anything. That was really hard for me.
And I just remember how comfortable I became in that environment. And I was able to share bits and pieces starting off with, like talking about my mother or talking about my son and things like that, how we used to go fishing and
sharing some of our memories. They're tough. Yeah, I might get upset about them. I might cry.
It evolved to me, journaling, kind of keeping it to myself and just kind of getting the feelings out, even if I didn't do anything with it or even like threw it in the fire and burned it.
But then I started sharing stories about my boys on TikTok.
I love sharing moments about my son of what we used to do together, the things that we've done, the life that he lived. I just love to spread the word about what he is.
And then it got a little easier when I told about his journey in life, as short as it was, right? Because I realized it started to make me smile to share his life with other people. If they were crazy enough to listen to me for a half a second, I was like, hey, let me tell you about my brother, man.
Like a lot of us in the grief community, I got online, got on Facebook and found, a grief community and Facebook groups and all those kind of things and got into a group and, started sharing it there.
And I get to get my granddaughter, his daughter, every other weekend. And so I try to share stories with her about her dad and things that he did whenever he was younger so that she will never forget who her dad is.
But then I started sharing stories about my boys, my feelings and my grief and my survivor's guilt and everything on TikTok.
They're tough, but at the same time though it's what gets me through the day and through life right now.
Because people hear the word child loss and it's like a plague. No one wants to be around you. And deep down inside, I wanted to talk about him. I wanted to share his memory with other people.
One of my favorite stories about my son is he was 17 years old and bought this little beat up pickup truck, little 98 pickup truck.
And this became a huge thing for me. This really, really helped me in processing my grief.
He kept asking me, Dad, will you help me work on it?
I got a massive response from it and it just blew up from there to the point that I now have Letters to Zachary on Facebook, which kind of chronicles all of my grief journey from the day he passed away.
I also found that in speaking about my boys on TikTok, it helped other people too.
So we got together and we started working on it. And we made it a project card for him. And this thing was raggedy as all, I mean, barely street legal.
And it's, you know, letters and poetry and commentary on grief topics, and you know, commentary on other material from other people, just my thought process of what they posted, and memes, and you know, it's kind of blown up from there.
And I don't ever want to miss sharing a memory, because I realize that there's someone else out there that needs to hear it as well.
But that was his pride and joy. That was one of our fondest memories, of sitting out in front of my house with me and him and a couple of his buddies, just cutting into his truck and doing this and doing that to it, and just seeing the joy on his face when we got done with it.
So the question of how easy is it for me to share stories about my boys, in the beginning, it was hard. It was horrible. I didn't like doing it.
He even made a YouTube video of it, just in a parking lot, because that was his favorite truck, and that's what he loved.
The one caveat of me sharing, I tell people, is I don't hold back. I'm very open. I'm very transparent. I'm raw. If I'm having a really bad day and I'm writing and I need to get some expletives out, then that's what's in my writing.
But later, when I started doing it on TikTok, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. And I enjoyed the questions people would have for me about my boys, and it was good. It's still good. Still good.
That's one of my fondest memories, of me and my son sitting out in front of our house and working on his truck.
It became easier over time, but it took a lot of work. It took an awful lot of work to get to that point to where I was willing to be vulnerable. So there was some steps that I had to take. But these days, yeah, it's quite easy to do it now.